Good morning, girls. In the last class, we talked about the two girls, Bertha and Grace, and also about their vacation plans. We saw that Bertha, she had decided to go to Riversdale to spend her vacations with Aunt Meg, whereas Grace has decided to spend her vacations at the bookstore, at the Clerkman's bookstore. So we'll continue with the chapter. Bertha looked surprised. She had not known what Grace's vacation plans were. Now, when Bertha gets to know about the vacation plan of Grace, she's shocked. She's very much surprised because till that time, Bertha was not aware of the vacation plan of Grace. "I don't think you ought to do that, Grace," she said thoughtfully. So here Bertha is giving her opinion on Grace's vacation plan, and Bertha tells that according to her, Grace should not be spending her vacations at the bookstore. She feels that it's not her duty to spend the vacation at the bookstore, at Clerkman's bookstore. "You're not strong and you need a good rest. It will be awfully trying to work at Clerkman's all summer." Here, Bertha reminds Grace that working at the bookstore, working at the Clerkman's bookstore is not a easy job. It's a very tiring job. And since Grace is not a very strong girl, Bertha reminds Grace that it will be very difficult for her to spend her holidays, her vacations at the bookstore. She feels that it will be a tiring and a terrible work. "There is nothing else for me to do," said Grace, trying to speak cheerfully. So Grace, she tries to be cheerful, she tries to be happy, and she tells that she does not have any other work to do during her vacations. She's not actually cheerful, she's not actually happy, but she tries to be happy. "You know I'm as poor as a proverbial church mouse, Bertie, and the simple truth is that I can't afford to pay my board all summer and get my winter outfit unless I do something to earn it." So here Grace is comparing herself to a church mouse. Now, church mouse, a mouse that lives in a church, will not get anything to eat because the churches, they don't usually store any food. They don't store any eatables. So, a mouse that is living in a church and it's dependent on the church food will always remain hungry. It will not get anything to eat. So, just like the church mouse, Grace also, she's comparing herself to the church mouse. She's telling that she's very poor, she's extremely poor, and unless she earns something, unless she goes to work and earns for herself, she will not be able to afford winter clothes during the winters, and she'll not be able to get food during the summers. Now here board means meals or regular meals for which you need to pay some amount, for which some money is to be paid. So Grace, according to Grace, she has to go to work in order to pay amount for her meals and also to buy some winter clothes. "I shall be too busy to be lonesome, and I shall expect long newsy letters from you telling me all your fun, passing your vacation on to me at secondhand, you see." Now here Grace is telling that she will be very busy during the vacations, that she won't have any time to feel lonely, and she wants Bertha to write her long letters, long detailed letters explaining everything about her vacations, explaining her experience and fun that they had during her vacations, so that Grace can have a second-hand experience. Now here it's written, "Passing your vacation on to me at second hand." Here it means that Bertha is the one who's going to enjoy her vacation, who's going to have fun during her vacations. So she will be having a first-hand experience because she's experiencing it for real. She's experiencing it in real. But Grace will not be experiencing it in real. She's just reading the letter. She's just reading every detail which is described in the letter. So she won't be having the first-hand experience, but she'll be having a second-hand experience. So this is what it means, passing your vacation on to me at second hand. "Well, I must set to work at those algebra problems. Now, algebra, it's a part of mathematics. It's a branch of mathematics, and Grace she's changing the topic, saying about studies. She's changing the topics to studies, and she's telling that she must get back to her studies. I tried them before dark, but I could not solve them. So she has been trying it for a very long time, even before it became dark, but she was not able to solve the problems. My head ached and I felt so stupid. How glad I shall be when exams are over. So Grace is telling here that she's been trying to solve the problems for a very long time, but she's not been able to, and she's getting a headache. And she also says that she'll be very happy when the exams get over. I suppose I must revise that senior English this evening, said Bertha absently. So Bertha also says about, they start talking about their studies. They change their topic and they begin to talk about their studies, and Bertha also says that she's going to revise her English chapter. But while talking, Bertha is not very happy. She is talking in a very absent-minded way because she's still worried about the plan of Grace, the vacation plan of Grace. She's still thinking about Grace's vacation plan. So she talks in a very, she talks absently. She talks in a very absent-minded way. But she made no move to do so. She was studying her friend's face. Even though Bertha said that she's going to revise her English chapter, she did not move. She sat there and she kept looking at Grace, the face of Grace. She kept studying her face, her friend's face. How very pale and thin Grace looked. Surely much paler and thinner than when she had come to the academy, and she had not by any means been plump and rosy then. So Bertha, she keeps looking at the face of Grace, and she realizes that Grace has gone very pale and thin. Now, pale, it's a very light color or very light tone you get on your face when you don't take good food or when you don't get nutritious food. You get that pale tone on your face. So Grace has started to get that pale tone on her face, and she's gone much thinner when compared to the time when she came first at the academy. Compared to that time, she's gone much thinner and paler, and since that time she's not been plump and rosy. Now plump means chubby. She's not gained any weight, she's not become chubby, but she's just shedding her weight. I believe she could not stand 2 months at Clarkman's, thought Bertha. Now Bertha, she's still thinking about the vacation plan of Grace. She's preoccupied with that thought, and she still gets that thought. She still feels that Grace will not be able to spend those 2 months at the bookstore, at the Clarkman's bookstore. And she gets many other thoughts. She thinks a lot about Grace's vacation plans. If I were not going to Aunt Meg's, I would ask her to go home with me. Or even if Aunt Meg had room for another guest, I would just write her all about Grace and ask if I could bring her with me. So here Bertha is having many thoughts. Bertha thinks that if she was not going to Aunt Meg and if she was going to her own house, she could have taken Grace along with her, and she even thinks of writing a letter to Aunt Meg asking her if there is an extra room, if there is an extra or spare room, she could take Grace along with her to Aunt Meg. So she has many thoughts, she has many ideas in her mind. Aunt Meg would understand. She always understands, but she hasn't, so it can't be. So Bertha, she feels that Aunt Meg is a very understanding person and she might understand the situation, but at the same time, Bertha feels that Aunt Meg might not understand. So she has two conflicting thoughts. Just then a thought darted into Bertha's brain. So just at that time she was having many thoughts in her mind, and she got a thought suddenly struck her mind. "What nonsense," she said aloud so suddenly and forcibly that Grace fairly jumped. So when Bertha got that thought in her mind, she screams aloud, "What nonsense!" and she screamed so loud that Grace, she almost jumped from her place. And she asks, "What is?" So Grace is asking what that nonsense was. "Oh, nothing much," said Bertha, getting up briskly. "See here, I'm going to get to work. I have wasted enough time." So when Grace asks what the nonsense was, Bertha, she gets back to her sense. All this time she was thinking, she was having many thoughts in her mind. But when Grace asks what the nonsense was, she gets back to her sense and she tells us nothing much, and she gets up very quickly and she tells that she's going back to work. She has wasted enough and more time and she has to go back to work. She has to go back to her studies. So here today we saw about the thoughts of Bertha, the thoughts which Bertha has when she hears about the vacation plan of Grace. So we'll stop for today, girls. Thank you.